Trouble.
Hello everyone, welcome to 2FAST2MOVIE. I'm your host Kenny, and with me is my co-host Matt Kime. And today we are covering episode 3 of Falcon and Winter Soldier. So Matt, what did you think about this week's action-packed episode?
It was honestly it was nice to see a lot of the faces that we got again. Especially Zemo and Sharon. It didn't do the things I expected it to do with those characters, which is always a bonus. And yeah, there wasn't. I don't like. It feels like a lot happened, but it also doesn't feel like a lot happened elsewhere outside of the Madripoor plot. But I had a good time with it.
Yeah, me too. It felt very John Wick action-packed episode, and I think that's sort of what we needed after the first two episodes.
Yeah.
Exploring these characters, and in this episode we finally get to have fun with the whole action spy thriller type thing.
Oh God! As someone who grew up watching the Jason Bourne movies, especially the original 3, like I love those movies, and so this is so evocative. And this is one of the reasons why I always liked Winter Soldier, probably a step above most of the other MCU movies, is just because it was so evocative of those kinds of movies that I just loved it. Like the globe-trotting spy thriller. I'm a sucker for that stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And before we dig in more, if you like what you see here, please be sure to subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. We upload new videos every week. Our friends are covering their segments of 2FAST2MOVIE, like Invincible and My Hero Academia. So please be sure to check that out after you watch this. And as always, spoilers ahead. So let's get into the summary. Episode 3, Power Broker. In this episode, desperate for leads, Bucky decides to break Zemo out of prison, much to Sam's dismay. So Sam and Bucky now have to work with Zemo to sort of find who's responsible for the super soldier serums. So the trio traveled to Madripoor, a fictional city that's sort of, modeled after Singapore, sort of disguised as, criminals. And, Sam's dressed as the Smiling Tiger, a sort of known pimp criminal type. That's a very obscure comic book reference, even I don't know about. And so, after some mishaps, with help of Agent 13, Sharon Carter, they were able to find the name of a Hydra agent that was working for Power Broker. He confesses that he used Isaiah Bradley's blood to recreate the super soldier serum, and Kari, one of the Flagsmashers, one of the Flagsmashers that we saw last episode, she stole 20 vials from the scientist. And right after, Zemo kills the scientist, and the gang makes their escape. Sharon Carter sort of stays behind in Madripoor, and the trio sort of leave to Latvia. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah.
They make their way to Latvia to try to find Kari, and with Walker and Battlestar sort of on their tail as well, trying to capture them for breaking out Zemo. And at the end, Bucky is confronted by a Wakandan warrior. So a lot happened in terms of action, but we sort of took one step forward with the in the plot. So Zemo was an interesting addition to this mission. What did you think, Matt? Do you think it worked?
I do, strangely. It's weird because I mean, thematically, for Bucky, it's nice to see that he has to confront and work with someone who's essentially the living embodiment of his trauma.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I've always liked the MCU's portrayal of Zemo, um, just as a very very intelligent but very grounded villain.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we definitely got that in here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it turns out he's a Baron. Like in the comics, he's known as Baron Zemo, um, and yeah, I wasn't expecting sort of uh, them to just go full. Oh yeah, he's a Baron, and I guess it now in hindsight it makes a lot more sense in Civil War how he was able to get certain resources and you know know a lot to try to take down the Avengers. Um,
Well, I got the
yeah.
impression from Civil War he was never mentioned as a Baron in Civil War,
No,
was he?
no, he was not. No, he was just a
I
regular
got
dude.
I got the impression that he had some measure of influence, but I always thought he was like Sokovian military or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Just because the guy clearly knows how to fight and handle weapons and counterintelligence and things like that. But Zemo, yeah, he has like access to private jets
Mm-hmm.
and his own Alfred. Uh,
Yeah.
um, it's nice because the guy was such a fascinating villain to me, and it's like there's more questions that are being raised about this guy's background and motivations.
Mm-hmm.
Because even right now, it's like Bucky and Sam came to him. He didn't. He was just in jail the whole time. So I'm still curious as to what his end game is, if he has even thought that far ahead at this point.
Yeah, I guess getting out was definitely one of them, and him being the villain, of course. He definitely has an ulterior motive of trying to escape at some point, maybe like backstabbing them, of course. Um, and yeah, his motivation in Civil War was that he hates superpowered beings and they shouldn't be a thing. And
Which is
yeah,
why he shoots the scientist.
yeah, exactly. And I guess that's part of his goal to just like, hey, if we're gonna take down the Flagsmashers, let's get rid of them all and make sure that none none can none can be created after this. Um, so I don't know. Like, yeah, I did find it interesting that he played a he was portrayed in a more comedic light in this episode. I lost it at at the club scene where he was just sort of awkwardly dancing in the club. I was just I don't know,
Well, the funny thing is that right before the club scene, Sharon Carter tells them stay out of trouble, and he goes,
yeah,
trouble, and then
trouble.
it just cuts to him like awkwardly dancing.
When I heard Zemo was in the show, that I did not picture that. I'll say.
But we do get him wearing the mask
Yeah, the mask and
at
the
the end of
coat.
the episode.
Yeah, the mask and the coat. And I like how it looks. An MCU version of it. The comic book version has a crown on it.
I like the
Yeah.
practical use of it.
Mm-hmm.
I was afraid that doing something like that would be a little too
Silly.
ostentatious for a character that has been up until this point very very grounded.
Mm-hmm.
But I thought it was woven in very well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I do like the look of it. Yeah, and along with Zemo, Sharon Carter, we finally get to see her, and like I sort of speculated, I guess she's still on the run. Yeah, and she wasn't pardoned.
Yeah, how? I like why?
Okay, yeah. So how I'm seeing it is so Bucky and Sam were pardoned for their crimes, uh, because the whole final battle in Endgame, where the Avengers were in the New York area, and like they fought off Thanos and stuff. And I guess I assumed that after they killed Thanos and stuff, the Avengers, or like people that weren't like exiled or whatever, sort of stood up for Sam and Bucky and others who were on the run with Cap, and they were like, okay, since you saved the world, like from total annihilation, we'll pardon you because you're heroes, and that would look bad on us as the U.S. government if we jailed the people who saved us,
and then Wanda goes and ruins it all.
Yeah. Check out WandaVision, 2FAST2MOVIE. Anyway, and just in the whole craziness of it all, like people coming back after the blip, Sharon Carter just sort of got lost in it all because Sharon Carter wasn't there at the final battle. She was probably still hiding in Madripoor or wherever she was at the time. I think she got dusted. We'll find out. I don't know, but
I just wish that the episode had been a little bit more clear about all of that, because a lot of these people you do find out pretty quickly whether or not they were part of the blip, and if not, what have they been doing in the interim time, or how have they been readjusting to coming back.
Sharon sort of takes a back seat after this episode. I don't know if we'll see her again. I hope so. I hope this wasn't her only episode.
I'd be a little bit disappointed if it was, because that was she was such a big part of at least Winter. Like she was a pretty significant role in both Civil War and Winter Soldier, and to be fair, her plot line was always more like her kind of like on and off thing with Steve before he goes back in time to be with her aunt.
Let's not think too much about that. But yeah.
But she was always kind of like a significant part of the SHIELD stuff before SHIELD fell apart. And so it'd be a missed opportunity if they don't bring her back, but I'm also not going to condemn the show for something it hasn't done yet. So I imagine we will see her again, especially because the last time we see her, she's talking to like a colleague or an assistant or somebody, saying that we have problems. So I think that we're going to see some more conflict with her coming up.
Yeah. So I'm really excited to see more of her. And her action sequences were really fun. The fights were really well choreographed and shot.
This was a really well. Yeah. As far as Sharon Carter goes, going back for a minute, I wasn't sure what to expect when we met her again, but it wasn't that. She's a very jaded person, jaded, angry, and is kind of living on the other side of the law. The U.S. government forgot about her, and she apparently is doing quite well for herself in the underground.
Yeah, she's
it's
holding a club, sort of
art gallery thing.
Yeah, I guess was she selling those, or was it just an underground museum / club type thing?
I kind of gathered that it was the latter.
I guess I don't know, criminals.
But just seeing her pick up the she almost adopting an anti-hero kind of role was surprising, but not an unwelcome one.
Yeah, and I think it fits. It's for a person on the run trying to survive, and a person with her skill set, it wouldn't be too outlandish for her to sort of adopt that role just to survive and sort of be a double agent type thing. Maybe she is a double agent where it's just I'm on the run or whatever, and when she's just I'm working for Sword or whatever, I don't know, but no, Sword is more of intergalactic type stuff than domestic. uh, terrorism or whatever. But yeah, she stayed in Madripoor, and that is Madripoor is sort of a big important place in the Marvel comics because that place is sort of like a hot spot for X-Men stories. A couple
What
of
stories take place there?
New Mutants, and I
Hmm.
believe Wolverine during his samurai days, I think stayed there a couple of times too. Um, and it's like yeah, like people like Magneto and it's just Sabretooths, they've come and gone because Madripoor is sort of like the place for shady shit to go on. Um,
So, a clarifying question for anybody that might not know: Madripoor is an independent city, kind of in the style of Singapore.
yep.
Am I to understand that that's what it's modeled after?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Madripoor is modeled after Singapore. It's a fictional city. It doesn't exist in real life, but it's an important city in Marvel comics. Um,
So, what do
yeah,
you think the significance of seeing something that's a big hub for the X-Men, especially in the
I
MCU?
I think so. Big spoilers for WandaVision. So one of the big things that happened in WandaVision was introducing Evan Peters' Quicksilver. But unfortunately, it turned out to be like Falcon.
I'm I'm not over that. I'm not over
Uh,
that.
yeah, I was pretty burned by that, but at the same time, I'm just like I what was I expecting? But not that, but
It
um,
subverted our expectations.
yeah. It's sort of like Iron Man 3, where the Mandarin. Ben Gingley's Mandarin was not the Mandarin. I'm like, okay, fine. Um, so yeah, me and Molly want, but I think it's because Disney has Fox under their monopoly now, um, that they're slowly sort of inserting they're going to do X-Men at some point, just not in this phase because they're not going to just drop an X-Men bomb in out of nowhere. So I think they're slowly introducing these locations, these references and characters, just to for the comic book fans to go like, oh, I know that reference, X-Men. So yeah, I think that's sort of what they're doing, and it's not like in this episode we're going to see we're gonna hear like, oh yeah, some dude here with like claws coming out of his hand and just rip that guy apart or something. That's very wishful thinking, but I feel like this is sort of like a slow introduction to you know uh, the X-Men and mutants at some point. As much as we wanted WandaVision to do that, um, it ultimately did, and this is the closest thing we'll get to X-Men references for now, because WandaVision originally was supposed to be like the last thing to come out in this phase, but because COVID hit, they moved WandaVision
That's
up.
right. This was supposed to have been released back in the fall, and then the shooting schedule got all messed up.
Yeah, Falcon and Winter Soldier was supposed to be the first one to be first in line, and introducing Madripoor and stuff like that, and it's just like, oh, I recognize it, that X-Men. And then WandaVision was supposed to be the last one in this phase, and everybody sees Quicksilver going, oh shit, and then it being a joke, just like, okay, fine, whatever. And then the next phase we actually have X-Men, so that's sort of what I think went on when this sort of shift happened, and that's why people are so angry right now. So but yeah, that's sort of what I think about Madripoor. Um, are you looking forward to more X Men stuff like this?
I. It's funny because the X-Men series is a series that as long as they don't recast Wolverine, I think I'll be okay with
Yeah, I
whatever they
agree.
do end up doing because we've seen two different casts of Marvel or of the X-Men in the same continuity now, because the Fox X-Men films ultimately had no idea what they were doing. I mean, sometimes they did, and when they were on, and then when they weren't, oh my god.
Yeah.
So it'll be nice to see them being brought under. The MCU is nothing if not consistent, and so it'll be nice to see sort of consistency being applied to Marvel. My God, I keep saying Marvel. It'll be nice to see a sort of consistency being applied to the X-Men, something that we just haven't had.
Yeah.
I do kind of worry about the just making everything kind of homogenous with the X-Men, because the X-Men, more than maybe any other superhero, have a lot of thematic significance baked into it. And so I would be curious to see how the X-Men, how that part of it gets handled. But that was even one of the things about WandaVision, is that you're starting to see public opinion turn against people with superpowers. So I can't help but wonder if that was part of it as well. But I think for now, the world building that they're doing is probably a good way to do it, just because it's like, it's not... Madripoor, for all intents and purposes, is just a place that Bucky, Sam, and Zemo go to do a thing. They do the thing and then they leave. But it's just creating a backdrop that they can use at a later point in time, which would help continuity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it didn't like overwhelm the episode with the member berries for the X-Men, and I am always really, really grateful when you can fit in references without doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree. And I, even like, for comic book fans, I don't think it's much more like, member berries, but it's just more or less just like, sort of introducing, just like, oh, we're going to go back to that later.
Yeah.
And yeah, and like, speaking of like, locations and stuff, Sokovia was finally mentioned post Civil War. And
we have some... So reportedly, Sokovia has been annexed by various countries around it, one of them being Latvia. And that's a fascinating piece of... when did that happen and how is what I want to know.
Yeah, I guess like, within... Like, with the Flagsmashers, they mentioned, like, during the blip, that 5-year period, I assume, just chaos just happened,
Yeah, no, that's actually an interesting point, just because, like, political and economic implications of something like that. And that's such a big thing to where it's like, I don't know that this show could ever fully show the full impact of something like that, at least not with 6 episodes, but it's interesting to me that, like, one of the casualties of the blip potentially was Sokovia getting annexed, because up until, like, right after Civil War, it was still its own entity, I think, because, like, I don't remember where this might have been even in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I don't remember where I saw this. There was, like, Doctors Without Borders style organizations and charities being sent for Sokovian refugees.
Yeah, I don't remember that. That might have been in
I
Agents
don't,
of S.H.I.E.L.D.
for the life of... maybe. I honestly don't remember. But it's also a nice piece of world building, too, because it makes Zemo, like, all the more interesting to me, because it's a guy who has quite literally lost everything except all his money, cars, guns, servants.
Yeah.
But I wonder, I guess, circling back, is I'm wondering how that plays into his endgame. Because they both want to stop the Flagsmashers, and I imagine that each party in this uncomfortable triumvirate we have right now has a different vision for their own endgame.
Yeah. I really enjoyed the chemistry of the trio. Like I enjoyed Bucky and Sam and sort of their interaction, and surprisingly I loved Zemo's addition to it. Like I don't know how to describe like what his vibe is, but like
well, because he sees the book from Bucky, and Bucky's like, if you mention that again, I'm gonna kill you. And then they all start arguing about Marvin Gaye. And Sam and Zemo take the same side.
Yeah, yeah. I did not expect, like, just Zemo just being a part of this, but, like, on their side. So, like, I'm just eating it up as much as I can, before inevitably Zemo turns on them at some point.
Well, because when he put on the hood and the coat and he started shooting the pipe to blow it up, I thought that was the moment where he was going to turn on them, and then he
Yeah,
didn't.
me too. Yeah.
And so yeah, no, it'll be it's a very, very fun dynamic, and I'm glad to have seen it.
Yeah, it's very, the spy thriller vibe type thing. Also, like,
The way
speaking of,
he
like,
broke out, the way that they filmed the thing that broke out, where it's Bucky going to Sam and he goes, "Hey, don't get mad, but hypothetically, if I did all this stuff, what would you say?"
yeah, God, like, I just love this, and I love that, Bucky has personality again. And uh, in in Madripoor, when Bucky was sort of playing the Winter Soldier role, I really loved that scene where he was just throwing down with all these guys, and sort of the Winter Soldier theme playing again. Like, I cannot tell you how
Yeah.
much I love the Winter Soldier leitmotif. It's just so good, and
It's one
I
of the
love it.
better musical cues in the Marvel universe, and truthfully, it's the Marvel, for whatever reason, the music just has never quite always landed for me.
I
But
agree.
that theme is easily one of the better ones, so it was nice to hear it again.
Yeah, because
Um,
the composer, I forget his name, but the composer of that piece, he literally just screamed into the mic and then just distorted it.
ooh,
So that,
nice.
yeah, that the theme was always supposed to evoke Bucky falling off the train when he was screaming, and he just sort of, that's just what
Oh,
kept
that's
on.
horrifying.
Yeah,
Oh my
so
god.
that theme is not just like a digital, like, crescendo. It's an actual scream that, like, you can sort of maybe think that Bucky is hearing in his head over and over again. That's just
Well,
my
you
my
could
head
see
canon.
it on his face that like everything he was doing was like deeply wounding him.
Oh yeah, and it's like, I don't like this, and it's just him bringing up that trauma again, for to complete this mission, and there's just so many layers to it, and I love seeing it. Love seeing it.
Speaking of layers, Sam's not the only person who's pissed about Zemo getting let go.
Yeah.
Because we see Io, who is one of a part of the elite guard in Black Panther from the Wakanda.
Yeah. Yeah. What'd you make of that? I honestly am still digesting it. So,
Um, it's honestly, it's a logical thing to have happened with Zemo gets out, and potentially Bucky, of all people, was the one to break him out. Um, it's understandable that Wakanda would want to intervene at some point with that, and that they would be royally pissed about that. Especially given all that they did for Bucky specifically, like rebuilding his arm, letting him take refuge there. Yeah, I'm excited to see where they go because, like, naturally Wakanda was going to be pissed about that and would send people to intervene. And so it's nice to see, because that's, like, very much the role Wakanda had before going public about vibranium, is kind of covert stuff like that. I gotta be honest, it's really bittersweet seeing anything about Wakanda right now for me.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. I absolutely agree. Um, yeah.
because Zemo, the events of Civil War affected. You could argue that T'Challa had the best character arc in Civil War. And that Zemo going free would be a very, very significant thing for him, of all people. So it's like it's just sad because of Chadwick, but I'm also curious to see how they'll handle it because I don't know that there's a good way to. I mean, I guess they could just say that T'Challa's busy or something, just people getting sent on his behalf, but I don't know that there's a good way around that, to be honest.
Yeah, but I don't know. But I guess we'll just have to see.
It was a hell of a stinger to end the episode on, though.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And also, again, the musical cue towards the end was just chef's kiss, perfect. Um, yeah, like I was surprised, like musically, in this episode, it just really worked for me, you know. Um, and yeah, sort of Wakandan theme towards the end was, I don't know, just a great send off. And yeah, so like Bucky and Sam are just like they're close, but also they're also getting cornered by like Wakandans and Walker and Battlestar. Um, I'm curious to see how all of this will clash at the end because we're sort of at the halfway point right now, and can't can't wait to see what happens next. Really,
Because John Walker and Battlestar. I'm sorry, that's such a lame name.
Battlestar or Walker.
Well, one guy, I mean, at least John Walker is written to be as generically rah-rah American as possible. And so that he'd be the physical embodiment of that. It makes sense, but...
Oh yeah, and Walker barging in and to like hassling civilians and stuff in the Cap gear was really
jarring.
yeah, and very distraughtful. Just like that's not right. That's not Captain America.
No.
But
Well, the funny thing is that we didn't really get any indications in the last episode that he would go to that extreme, but then again, we have to see why he isn't worthy of the shield and why Sam is.
I feel like Walker's gotten to this point in this episode is mostly because in the last episode where he's trying to fill the shoes of Cap, Sam and Bucky were just like, "You're not Cap," and then just sort of walks away from him. And like towards the end where he's just like, "Come on, guys, let's work together," and Sam and Bucky were like, "No, because you're not Steve, and you're not Cap, and you will never be Cap." And he sort of
I still think he's gonna get his hands on one of those super soldier serum and inject himself with it. It's like, fine, will this make you accept me?
Yeah, I think.
Like, I think that's where they're going with this.
Yeah, probably. Or maybe he's already juiced up. Who knows? I don't know.
I don't know.
But yeah, continue.
One thing I did notice is that they're starting to develop a theme of Zemo basically spells it out, where putting heroes on pedestals and having people be the embodiment of an ideal or of a country or something, and the inherent dangers of doing something like that, which is one of the reasons he was against the Avengers to begin with, is having people who have unchecked amounts of power just going around playing God, basically. And the responsibility that entails. So you see Sam starting to get a little bit disenchanted with the whole idea. You see Sharon is completely broken from the program there. She brings it up, and then you see John Walker, who's at the very least cracking under pressure so far.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, a lot of interesting seeds are placed in this episode that we'll see how they'll grow moving forward. Overall, compared to last two episodes, did you like this episode more than the others, or like or
I don't know about
what do you think?
I don't know about like liking it more than the episodes. I thought it was a good continuation of the story that had been building up to this point.
Yeah.
The action was fun. Seeing Zemo was fun. Seeing Sharon again was great. Like, there was stuff that happened to Flagsmashers, but it just kind of felt like those scenes were there to just reminded us that they exist. But it was, it's a well done episode. I don't think there was any like mind blowing character revelations, but I also don't think we're in the part of the show where it needs to be doing that quite yet.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I had a good time.
Yeah, same here. This was a very fun episode. This is sort of like sort of the reward for like sticking with the characters and just like, all right, now we just get to let loose and have fun for this episode. and I guess the real tragic repercussions will start in the next episode. But yeah, for me, I thoroughly had a great time with this episode. I could almost turn my brain off for a little bit for the sort of action sequences and the silly moments of Sam just oh yeah, I'm the smiling tiger, and oh yeah, this is good shit, and just him just trying not to crack. I just love that.
Or when he was complaining about looking like a pimp, and Zemo's like, that's the most American thing you could have said.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, another great episode, and I can't. I'm really excited for next Friday. I'm really amped up after this episode because it's just so energetic, and yeah, I definitely want to see more. But yeah, thank you, guys, as always, for tuning in. You can see more of 2FAST2MOVIE on our channel here on YouTube. Our friends will be covering other shows like Invincible and My Hero Academia, as mentioned before, so check those out after you watch this. And you can also find our podcasts on most places you find podcasts, like Spotify and Amazon Music. Yeah, thank you for listening, and as always, it's 2FAST2MOVIE.